Hello and welcome back to Take Flight Podcast, episode number 71. Today we are talking about the rich are getting richer during the pandemic and the value of money. Now, during the pandemic, there may have been irreversible changes made to our economy, also the job market, as well as wealth inequality. Certain online giants like Google, Amazon, etc., were able to conduct business as usual, whereas others were labeled as non essential and forced to shut down. This has led to an increase in wealth creation over the last year, way more than before in history. Now, we discuss, is it fair for billionaires and tech companies to make approximately trillions of value during COVID, whereas others can't? And then we dive a little bit deeper into the topic of money. What does it mean to us and its value? Seems like all assets are going up, as well as cryptocurrency, which we also discuss. So we hope you enjoy episode number 71 of Take Flight Podcast. Now, before we get into the episode, we just wanted to say a very big thank you to all our listeners. We've just found out recently that Take Flight Podcast is in the top 5% podcasts globally. And at the moment, there are more than 2 million podcasts around the world. So a very big thank you for your support. Please share this with your friends. Please let them know about the podcast. We've got lots of episodes that we hope is giving you value. So please continue to share. And thank you so much for the support. On top of that, we've recently started Take Flight Tuesdays in Clubhouse. Our next conversation will be this coming Tuesday on the 2nd of March. Please do join us. We look forward to continuing the conversation there and enjoy the episode.
Take off, take flight with you. For we never fly, but we're flying.
The status of the richest be passed between Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos over the last year, where we've seen them gain trillions and trillions. People have said that we've seen the rich gain probably around 10 trillion over the last year, even though we've been in a pandemic. What are you guys' views of this? Do you think it's fair? Especially when you see small businesses closing down during the last year as well.
My question to that is, why wouldn't it be fair? That is a question. We often say, is it fair? But really and truly, why do we perceive it not to be fair that they're getting richer?
The reason I would start with that, the reason why I would say it's not perceived as being fair, because these companies were forced to shut down, right? It wasn't a situation where they could stay open and individuals can decide if they want to take on that risk or not. They were mandated to close down their store. So if you're looking at restaurants, if you're looking at gyms, etc.
Yeah, but then that's where there's room for opportunity. That's where you have to be quick and to innovate and be adaptable and flexible. We've seen a number of stores, department stores, fashion outlets that have, rode the wave. Some have gone under. But I use Primark as an example. They were asked a few years ago whether they wanted to have an online presence. They said no. Even with COVID hitting, that question came up again. They said no, they only want physical stores. And they're making that decision, a conscious decision, not to have an online presence and, be only in an Oxford Street and other stores nationally. But also at the same time, I know there is an element where some department stores have an online presence, but also benefit from the physical customer. I'll use Harrods, Selfridge as an example. They get a lot of money and make a lot of sales through tourism. So when people come into the UK, they know Harrods is a very, very well-known British store. You might even go there for, afternoon tea, whatever it may be, but also the experience. So they have that physical attraction. And of course, they have an online store, but you wouldn't get the same experience you'd get online with the in-person store. But then back to the question of, is it fair that these billionaires, these millionaires are getting richer? It's not necessarily a problem with them getting richer. I think people often have a problem with how they use that profit or the wealth that they've created. There is no obligation. There is no obligation whatsoever for them to donate, support the needs of other people. That's not necessarily what they're there to do. But with their CSR, their corporate social responsibility, it may be of their best interest, especially as they impact the environment, the economy, of course, appeasing their shareholders on how they may use those profits to possibly reinvest in certain areas, especially maybe from underprivileged backgrounds where they haven't got the technology for online school and those sorts of initiatives, but they're not obligated to do so. But we as a people tend to think better of them when they do announce that they're now going to donate X amount or help X number of school students over the X number of years to help them in their education. They don't have to, they choose to. I don't necessarily think it's a problem with them getting richer, because it's what their business is, and every business is there to make money or to provide a service, unless you're a non-profit organization. It's no problem them getting richer is what I'm trying to say. How they make their money is up to them. We are the consumers. We're the ones that decide whether they get richer in most instances.
Yeah, that's
of
a big
course,
point. That's a big
service
point.
behind the scenes. But Amazon, everyone's saying, "Oh, Jeff Bezos, lend me a $5." But I'm still on Amazon Prime every day buying stuff. So if I'm gonna know he's getting richer, why that's not on my Prime account? Why that's my Prime account?
Yeah, Dan,
Anyway,
I love the way you've opened up. Actually, just maybe to lean in with from my first point is when I first saw the topic of the agenda, the first thing that came to mind was not necessarily as a question, is it fair? It's almost like the way the question was positioned is almost like we're surprised that the wealth gap has basically widened. And one thing we do know is that the market works in cycles. You've got the short-term cycles and long-term cycles. So it's safe to say that, and we've seen it in the past, right? Every 8 to 10 years, there's going to be something along the lines of a black swan event, and then there's going to be what you can call as a pandemic, and this wealth transfer taking place. So it comes back to the question of, I mean, there are structures in place, but it speaks back to that education. It speaks back to that networks, and it speaks back to Daniel's point on some taking risk and innovating. So it's really around this period, it's a level playing field, right? And it's those who are positioned in those what I've just mentioned as to who can take advantage. So for me, it's not a question of like, I think I can come on to the fair piece. I had an example with Philip Green and Arcadia, but just generally looking at how things take place every 10 years, it's been happening. It's not the first time it's happened. Sure, your initial reaction to the question.
I think similar to UP, I think the word fair, it comes with kind of connotations, and then you go into discussions about bias, and then I think a lot of opinions can come into it as well. I think essentially the people that we're talking about, these are companies that are providing a service, and as Daniel has said, these are businesses that are for profit. And during the pandemic, because of their business model, companies like Netflix, Facebook, Amazon, they provide services that everyone is using and everyone is needing. So I don't see it being a fair, unfair discussion, because they're essentially making money from something that's in demand and that's of use to a lot of people, which is generating the wealth creation. Now, how that's distributed and can more be done for people at one end than the other, I think that's a different discussion. But whether it's fair or not, it's just market dynamics, right? And if you're providing a service or a product that generates that level of demand, then I think you should be compensated for that.
Yeah, and the thing is, they also.
I think when I throw, because I think
Can you hear me?
just me being the devil's advocate in this scenario, right? I think the reason why I argue the case of the fair element is, one is we all know that trillions have been pushed into the economy, right? We know money is being pushed into the economy. And when we look at where the money goes to, a lot of this money is supporting large businesses in terms of bailouts, right? So when we talk about stimulus checks, etc., that certain people receive, or furlough that people receive, it's pennies in comparison to how much the businesses are getting in terms of bailout and support. Also, you can argue the case of, okay, a lot of these people have received, a lot of these people's wealth is based on stocks and shares, right? Stocks and shares in their companies. Looking at what we've seen in terms of an increase during the pandemic, I would argue, are these companies overinflated, right? Like if I see your stock price times 3, times 4, Tesla, etc., right? Can you clearly show me 4 or 5 times more revenue or benefit that you've gained during the
Tesla's a good
COVID?
example, though. Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
So that's where I'm saying, is that fair? I have a house, whatever, etc. During the pandemic, I haven't truly seen that increase. So you understand what I mean? It's like, are they getting rewarded because of the fact that they're in a tech space? And we've seen lots of changes in the tech space where there's corrections and now it's being reduced, etc. We've seen them being pumped with a lot of money. I'm just trying to look at it that way in terms of, that's what I think has been unfair. And I feel like they've been given a playground to play, which has been removed from other people, right? if I look at small businesses, small restaurants, they were told, hey, these are the criteria you're going to need to do to be open. Then they came back to them. So companies spent hundreds, some millions, so thousands or millions on making sure that their restaurants was COVID proof per se. And then all of a sudden it was like, no, you need to close up shop. Like they're being put in a field where they cannot win. It's impossible to win in that space.
I think just to check in. So just building a little bit on my initial comment earlier. I think I think the tech companies, they all have their own moats, right? They all have a way of doing business that means there's significantly high barriers of entry. So I personally think we should take them out of the conversation because they're essentially doing a service that online they can do and they do it very, very well. So I think they don't have as much competition versus the smaller businesses. Now, probably where I could argue the unfair aspect is you have these cafes or corner stores or whatever that are deemed as non-essential, but they're small family-run businesses. These businesses have had to close down, whereas chains, larger restaurant chains, for example, that have drive-through accessibility, they can still remain open. There, I can probably see that unfair angle of being told to close down, but then a restaurant the size of McDonald's remains open. Then I think there's more of a discussion of the fair and unfair. But I think on the tech side of things, P already mentioned about the educational aspect. There's still opportunities to invest in these companies, right? You just need to know about it and understand it. But I think for the tech ones, it's difficult to say is it fair or unfair when it's still driven by market demand. It's driven by people wanting to buy.
I agree it's driven by market demand, but I'm saying in terms of a crisis, there's been opportunities we've seen financial crisis, right? Where the government decided we are going to back these big companies after they made mistakes, right? You can look at airline companies right now, which airline companies have closed, but Delta and whatever are still, their share prices is still going up because they've been given trillions and trillions of money to stay alive. We haven't seen that same focus or support in smaller businesses, in my view. Right.
But then you ask yourself, these bigger companies obviously have some value to the government that are being or whoever's bailing them out.
Employees and income taxes.
They're not going to give you millions of pounds if they don't receive a benefit from that. 100%. And unfortunately, the small businesses can't. It's not scalable to the large businesses. You know, these large businesses go bust. It has a much bigger ramification for the level of unemployment. So I don't think it's fair, especially when you think about the contracts that were handed out by the government. And that's a scandal in itself. But it's very difficult to even, like Shaw said, when you bring the tech aspect into it, and when you think about the wealthiest people, the two names that have always come into play in recent weeks and months, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. And even when when Elon Musk was first announced the richest man in the world, I just thought this isn't long lasting because the majority of his wealth is tied to stock. So Tesla stock goes up, his wealth on, not intrinsic wealth, but his wealth on, so to speak, because of what he owns goes up. It's not, it's not going to be long term because it can tumble as it did. It went to second, back to first, XYZ. But when you think about Warren Buffett, that one's true wealth. That's old money. That's not new money. That's old money. Old money.
Tail end money. Old money. Last 5 years money.
Yeah. So I think there's definitely a different kettle of fish. But unfortunately, back to large businesses and small businesses, they're large for a reason, and they're deemed large.
With this one, you're always going to have a for and against. You can easily ask for. We can both do the same. We can stand on either side of the fence. But I think to Daniel's point, it's true. The larger companies have played a role because of the number of people that they've hired over the years and how much these people are paying in income taxes. That has a benefit to the government, which they then use for their services, right? Which is not quite the same on a smaller scale business. So it's a little bit. What we're not talking about is the risk that these business owners have taken to get themselves into the position that they're in. We're focusing a lot on their upside, but when they sort of have a crash or they're bankrupt, we don't necessarily put as much attention on that. Is it fair or these things? So the one thing when I was looking into this that I do think is a bit unfair is where you have, I don't think personal greed in this particular time period where you're using your network's education to get ahead and increase your wealth is unfair. I think you're doing what you should do based on what you've acquired. I think where it's unfair is when you have that sort of corporate greed that leaves millions stranded. So for example, I think there's an example with Philip Green in Arcadia. I think there's a 1.1 billion pension fund hole. I don't even know exactly the root causes, but that for me is unfair, right? Because these employees, I mean, pension funds is one separate topic, but you're basically, people have put years of service into the company to then find themselves in a position where they may not even be able to have a pension. That's where I feel government's support funding bailouts need to basically really come in play and help. And I think they're going through that process right now. That's where it's really, I think, unfair. So I think unfairness is probably in pockets. There's some examples, but I don't think it's a blanket.
But
I think
why do we?
the thing that I was going to say, I think there's always going to be an element of unfairness. Always, no matter how you look at it, no matter what the industry is, there's always going to be winners and losers. And unfortunately, there needs to be winners and losers. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
For sure. So okay, then why do we switch in terms of, instead of talking about unfair or fair, why do we talk about what this pandemic has taught us about the value of money and what money actually means to each one of you? So, has your views on money changed during this pandemic, or has it stayed the same?
No, it's just been reinforced. I think we all knew this before the pandemic, that money has no value. The only value that money has is the value that we give it. Human capital give money. Because, for example, if you look at cryptocurrency now, Bitcoin, that value is driven by what we believe it has its value. So this pandemic has only reinforced what we already believed. I think in the US, 20% of all US dollars in circulation was printed last year, right? So and it's clear, the more you print something, the less value whatever is in circulation it has. So for me, it's always been a case where money is just a tool for change, and it depends on how you yield that tool as to whether it brings positive or negative change. And that's really what it comes down to. But it in itself has no value.
And you said you had the same view prior to the pandemic, but it's just reinforced it, right?
100%. So what I've seen this pandemic is I've actually seen it play out. So before, it was a lot of education and theory and seeing how things have worked in history, looking at the Great Depression, going as far back and just seeing how things play out. This pandemic, when I'm reading the headlines, right, the UK government has released X number of billions, injected X number of billions into the market. It's like, okay, this is the evidence now, right? This is the proof. So
because previously the last crisis or financial quote unquote crisis we've had was the financial crisis, right, in 2008, and we were quote unquote young, like we didn't truly see or feel the impact of this. So this is the first one that we're experiencing as working class, mid-age adults. What about yourself, Shua?
Yeah, so I was going to say, I think my perception of money also hasn't really changed. Similar to P, has kind of been reinforced. One thing I have to say, though, I think the discussions that I'm having with friends and family about money has probably changed for the better. I think the recession happening, I don't know if recessions are over, but the pandemic and then everything that happened economically because of that, people are becoming aware now that things that we've spoken about in previous episodes, the idea of having one source of income versus multiple, the idea of investing in shares. I have group chats now where I have friends talking about shares, performance, this going up, this going down, let's invest, tracker funds, all of this stuff. And these are conversations that weren't going on 18 months ago. So I think this has made people realize. I think also I've seen friends that are now, the idea of having side hustles, things that we've spoken about on this podcast right from the beginning, now people are realizing the importance of it and then thinking with the pandemic, let's give it a go. So I think in that sense, it's been a reality check for a lot of people. And I think but for me personally, not so much of a big change, but just a confirmation of assumptions. Just one little quick plug. If you want to know also some other financial topics that we've discussed, in episode 63, we talked about net worth versus self-worth, where we talked about the monetary value and whether we compare this with our self-worth. And another episode, which I can recommend, was episode 62, where we talked about how much money do you need to earn to be happy, and can money buy happiness? So just to share those episodes, episode 62 and 63 of Take Flight Podcast.
Mr. Plug,
you know what?
Plugging in those episodes.
Daniel, go ahead. I was going to just come back to that fairness piece.
No, go
one of the things that we're not talking about enough, I guess, when you talk about fairness, we should speak about it in entirety. We're focusing a lot on the business owners who have experienced a huge upside during this period, and then you're basically saying on the flip side, what about those sort of, what about the average person that goes to work, comes back home, and is now sort of doesn't have a job? Are we talking about how the school system is perhaps failing people in them not necessarily being prepared for times like this, right? Because there is an element of taking a bit of risk, being a little bit entrepreneurial, having some form of business for protections in these times. So if I think about the fairness, right, it's looking at the whole end-to-end spectrum and saying, okay, where is what's really fair? Because schools are not preparing you for this. Yeah, go ahead. Just go ahead.
Yeah.
Say again.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that most people are not prepared for a pandemic, right? I think we gotta understand that this is an extreme scenario. I totally agree with you in terms of the school system hasn't prepared people for ownership. It's a conversation about ownership, right? That's why I think about this whole pandemic, right? Is a whole conversation about ownership. What this pandemic has taught me is to actually value cash less. So what I mean value cash less, I mean cash sitting in my bank account less. So the reason I say that is because yes, you need to have the basic to cover you for an emergency. So either that's 3 months, 6 months, right? And then you want to focus on having cash flow. So I'm less focused about having a large sum and making sure that on a month by month basis, I've got money coming in. But this pandemic showed me that the only risk you can do or take is no action. Like you already guaranteed that that's going to fail. You know the value of money is going to drop year. Like one thing that's guaranteed is that £1, $1, whatever currency you're in, it's going to be less valuable 5-10 years down the line if you don't do anything with it. You just touch it. But when you start to invest that, when you start to use that to spend to start a business or try and create or purchase an asset that generates certain cash flow, then you've got an opportunity there of that either increasing. Obviously, there's an opportunity of that reducing or declining, but there's that massive gain that you can achieve by investing it. So that's one thing I've learned mainly from this pandemic. In regards to like the fear element of it, I totally agree with you. Most of us are not prepared to succeed in terms of in this world, in terms of finance. Unfortunately, like Daniel said, which is completely true, right? It's coming from a place of power. These big giant companies have employed a lot of people. They generate a lot of cash. If you look at Apple and you look at their cash that they generate, is crazy amounts, right? So in those scenarios, you as a government, you as a person is going to support that bigger giant, right, than a smaller company. Rightfully, wrongfully so. It's just logic. You're going to do that. But for me, I think the biggest thing I've learned doing this is money is only valuable as a tool to invest in assets or anything that generates cash on a monthly, daily, weekly basis, whatever.
Yeah, just quickly, just to chime in on that one. Totally agree with what Oliver was saying, and then we can go to Daniel. You talk about I guess, speaking to that fairness or what you've learned. One of the things I think this has taught everyone is the ability to anticipate. Right? How well are you? If you think about, we should be thinking right now, what happens to our operations, our businesses, if there was no internet? Right? So we need to be. I think that's one of the biggest things that has come from it. In addition to sort of the value of money, which is the ability to anticipate, and are you sort of protecting yourself, and are you building a business that can withstand a downturn? And that's where I think people who have done that well have been able to win during this period, right?
And Pete, just to build on that as well, I think, like Ollie mentioned, the black swan, and I think you're basically saying that we should be prepared for this. I think if we think we're all around the 30 age, right, around that, and how many kind of once in a lifetime moments has there been? So 9/11 is something that happened when we were kids. At that point, all the markets, etc., were spooked. Then the big recession in 2008, which was triggered in the US because of the mortgage market, that had a financial impact across the globe. And then now we see the pandemic, which again was kind of a once in a lifetime. So just in our life, in the 30 years that we've been alive, there's been 3 monumental moments that have happened. So I could probably say with a high chance in the next 60 years, the chances are there's going to be at least another maybe 3, 5, 6 moments as well.
The next one's internet. They're locking it off. Fact.
So, but that we should all be, basically the message of preparing and being like sure that we have our cash invested, everything set up, in different ways, because we don't know what's going to happen, right? But we just need to be prepared for that and anticipate it, as Pavilo said.
Would
Let
you
me
guys?
ask you a
Let me
serious
just throw a
question.
question.
If
Let me ask you a question. Yeah.
the internet got locked off right now. What's going on?
But why? Because I don't want
Well,
us
yeah.
to dive too much into conspiracies.
Okay,
But why do you think? Why do you
It's not
think?
conspiracy.
He's always
What-
going
what-
conspiracy.
It's not conspiracy.
Help
It's-
me understand that line of thinking. Where's this
I was-
block off of the internet?
No,
come from?
because I'm just
It's
thinking
because of
about.
the 5G towers.
No, it's not even that. It's not even that. Honestly, I swear, Dan, I was just thinking about anticipating, right? So, I guess, this is what this is maybe the point I'm making. We're not asking us. The biggest risk is the things that we're not seeing and what we're missing. So I think I think maybe the reason why I put it out there is because have you even thought about a world or 3 weeks without no internet? And could you manage? Could you move? You probably haven't.
All I need is my prayer mat and my Quran, and I'm good.
So I guess that's a great example of even what's happened during this COVID period. None of these sort of hotels or hospitality chains thought people would be indoors for a year plus. You just wouldn't think, but maybe.
So,
So-
Pete,
No,
what
I
would you
think-
do? What would you do if the internet locked off? What would you do?
It's a struggle, isn't it? Joking now. I got my family. No, I was just thinking now, actually, just real quick. I was thinking I'd have to wire so much money to one account because obviously I can't see that account right during the internet being down, and then just use my debit card as per normal, and then we'll just.
But
I guess
internet
if you went to the
won't-
shop,
that
but
sounds
it
like
still won't
internet
work.
means
you had a heads up.
Point of sale.
You
Point
won't
of
get
point
the
of
notice.
sale won't
Yeah.
work. Point
You
of
won't
sale
get the
won't
Yeah,
heads
I know,
up to
point
be
of
able to
sale wouldn't
transfer
work.
the yeah.
boy, it's peak, innit? It's I am legend, innit? No, let's get serious. Look at shit. Then you go
No,
ahead.
but one question I wanted to ask about that is because I actually had a conversation with someone that I said what this pandemic has taught me is that we are so reliant on technology. And if we ever reached a stage where we had a I am legend sort of scenario, how many people know how to even hunt for food or produce food?
Mate,
a lot of
there's
people-
I can
grocery
do
stores-
chin-ups, man.
I can do
You
chin
see these films, yeah? You see these films, yeah? These films are documentaries, you know? They're not films. That's another
They
topic.
teach
But
you how
anyways,
to survive. But no, one question I wanted to ask, following up from Shuwal's point, that I wanted to ask you about is how many of you can say that you truly executed this pandemic? And the reason why I'm going to say this is, and I'll start, right? Because for me,
well, it's not.
there was a great opportunity. There was a great opportunity.
Okay,
Yeah?
go.
And let me be real and transparent. There was a great opportunity. Yeah. In March, when the stock market crashed, yeah, or crashed and went down, yeah, I could stand here and say
I know you're
I
gonna
knew
say, bro. You
there
can't
was going
say
to be a
that.
recovery.
What?
I knew
Okay.
there was going to be a recovery. I think every
Okay.
single one of us could have said here.
Well, hindsight's
Yeah.
a beautiful thing, man. In
Exactly,
March,
exactly.
No,
in
it's not
March,
hindsight because
everything
it's
was-
not hindsight
It
anymore.
is-
The reason
it-
why
no,
it's not hindsight anymore.
The hindsight because you know why? Do you know why? Because you'd have been in March, but you wouldn't have known when to buy. You'd be like,
Exactly.
it's
No.
gonna drop. Actually, no.
Or
No,
when
no,
the
I
bottom
don't know,
was.
next
You could
week.
argue it's hindsight, yeah.
Big
The
man
reason
thing.
why,
Olu,
let me
serious,
finish.
yeah?
The reason why you can't say it's hindsight, yeah, is because we've had different scenarios. Hindsight, for me, hindsight is and this is not saying usual, but hindsight is an idiot's excuse, right? And the reason I say that is a lot of stuff that happens in life have happened before, but we haven't read up about it or seen, okay, how did the market recover in this particular crisis or this particular crash? So even if, yes, you can argue, yes, we didn't know exactly when the bottom is, right? Yeah, go on.
No, continue. I'm gonna hit you though. As soon as
Yeah,
you finish.
even though you could argue that we didn't know when the bottom was, I could easily say in 5 years, 10 years time, I know the market would have recovered. So to give you an example for myself. When everything crashed in March, end of March / beginning of April, I probably put around 2-3K into the market. Yeah. Those particular investments, they weren't like, I'm not the smartest person in terms of picking stocks. Those particular investments, yeah, have gone up 80, some even 100% since that period of time. And I didn't go
Right,
100%
300.
in, right? Huh?
Not
What you
300.
say?
Not 300%.
No. Maybe you got some 300. I know you got some. Your paid,
Go
your
on, go on.
employment pays you to have that sort of extra edge. But no, a lot of my investments went up significantly. And like part of me is sitting there saying, okay, Olu, you didn't truly trust the system, and you didn't are we missing out on big opportunities because we're not playing big? If you look at Elon Musk, right?
It's
He
not
decided
that,
to
no,
put-
it's not that he
Yeah, go
didn't.
on.
It's not that you didn't trust the system. You didn't believe in what you were doing.
No, I did.
You didn't truly believe.
did.
You didn't, because if
I
you
did.
believed in it, you would have put
Bro,
more
it
in.
comes down to balls, bro. You didn't have the
No,
balls.
for me, it doesn't come down to that. It comes down to how prepared, and I will stand here and say I wasn't truly prepared for the pandemic, right? Prepared in terms of saying, okay, prepared in terms of saying, oh,
I promise
how
you,
much cash do I need to stay comfortable for a period of time? Gone.
Olu, I promise you, this is the kind of thinking that's gonna kill you. Not kill you literally, but what I mean is, it's the same thing with the Bitcoin. It's the same thing with the Bitcoin. I mentioned that thing about that 2014. We don't know what we don't know. And so the only thing you can do is commit yourself today to say, look, I've experienced what that feels like to not take advantage of what I believed was actually going to recover. So the next time it comes up, I'm going to basically go all in. So for me, I'm basically saying, make sure you've got the balls next time it happens, because that's just how it works.
Do we have to live it to say we're going to be prepared?
Of course, because
I disagree with that.
No, but not everything.
You don't have to live
there
it.
is something. No, but there's but well, you're about to live it. So what I'm saying to you is, there are some things you have to basically experience to know better. So, but I just feel like that way of thinking is going to sort of crush us internally for no reason. You're being hard on yourself. Go ahead.
Basically, life can be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. Case closed.
Yeah.
No, but
it's been a while since
what you guys are saying, those points they're good quotes, yeah. But
this is
saying that you say you learn from other people's mistakes. You learn from other people's mistakes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Are you trying to tell me that this pandemic, in terms of what's happened to the financial markets, is isolated and is only this time that it's happened?
No. It happens every 8 to 10 years. We know this. But what I'm saying to you is, you knew that, but why this time you didn't put it all in? Because something is you. It's not the market. So
no, and I agree with saying that it's me, but I didn't need to live it to now say, okay, next time I'm going to do it. And it's because there's going to be certain different scenarios.
But the thing is, you did take advantage. You just didn't over leverage, or at least to the ceiling. You put 2 to 3K in. You did make the most of it. The thing is for you, because I know how many. Let me ask a question. How many times have you calculated if you had put X amount in Bitcoin in 2011?
Only on Bitcoin. Only on Bitcoin. That's the only one. Only on Bitcoin.
But that's exactly the same thing. Like, we keep going back and saying, oh, if only I had done this, if only I had done that, if only I had. You've literally just said just now, you put money into the market when it was down, and you're up 100 and something %. So all I would say to you is, moving forward.
One thing I'm afraid with our group. Yes.
Why are you pissed? Why are you pissed? Let me know. Why are you pissed?
So I'm not. The word is not pissed. It's more advice that you're giving out in terms of, if you truly see a pattern, or you've learned something from history or previous crisis, you should go more in. Like, you should be more assertive with your decision. Yep.
Okay. So
because even in regards to
10K into Bitcoin tonight. 10K into Bitcoin tonight.
If you don't read about history, if you don't
10K,
read about history,
watch this though. Watch this. What's the reaction?
Yeah.
10K into Bitcoin tonight. You know it's going up.
No,
you
but
know it's going up. Olu, you know it's
going up. Going up.
See,
that's the thing about it. No. But he doesn't have a point. The reason why he doesn't have a point is, whenever you have any specific investment, you get to decide which investment you want. Bitcoin could go up, but it might not be the best place for my money to go up. If it's going to go up by 20%, 30%, it might not be the best place to deploy your money. That's just by saying Bitcoin is going to go up.
We're talking about psychology right now. I'm telling you now, when Bitcoin hits 100,000,
let me give you a perfect example. Apple just dropped recently, right? Where they called it as a tech fin. In the last month, Apple's gone down by 10, 15%. What did I do in that situation? Pump money into Apple.
Buy on the dip. Everyone buys on the dip. Any trader,
forget the emotions,
buy on the dip. We'll buy it up.
So you're doing it then. You're doing it, but you just sound. I think it feels like you sound like you should have put in 15K or 20K. The returns are low. Don't be living life like that, B.
No, it's not about living life like that. It's knowing when to be more. I think if I ask you a question, when have you been correct about a particular, or seen a particular trend or an opportunity, and you can 100% say here that you've gone 110% in? I could say that most of us on this call haven't had that.
There's always the element of risk and the fear factor. There's always the fear factor. There's always like, what if? Because we always say only invest what you're willing to lose. Because I think 10K might get you 100K, great. But am I willing to lose 10K? Nah.
I think
that's the whole point.
I think investors like ourselves have to live this period to know how to position ourselves moving forward. We needed this experience because this is the first time we've actually been able to play at a time when we've had some capital to be part. Like you're actually talking about being part of the game. In 2008, you wasn't. I don't know what you was doing, but
We'll
let's
start
say
uni.
we wasn't.
We'll start uni.
Yeah, we wasn't invested the way we are today. So I think, going back to your question, I do think that if you talk to successful investors, they will tell you of where they learned how to make moves, and it was in previous cycles. So, but there are people that get lucky, right? There are people that put
I
their
don't think
money
it's
in Bitcoin
lucky.
and that
I
boom.
think sometimes there's some people that do get lucky, but I think there's also element of it of preparing yourself, right? I think there's a lot of people that maybe this pandemic didn't impact them. They were either too young, they're listening to this, and they don't need to experience this to say, okay, this is what happened in the pandemic, right? I think if we had educated ourselves more of what happened in 2008, the other stuff, what happened in the market, we would have, I think, had a bigger play, right? We would have had
But I
probably a
can tell you,
mastermind. Yeah, go on.
I can tell you that I think we're definitely making the best of from the property standpoint. Why do I say that? One, we had capital ready, right? Before this went into it, we took advantage of the bounce back loans.
Yeah.
Number two, we're taking advantage of the stamp duty tax. We didn't know these opportunities would come up, but we knew there would be some opportunities. We're still taking advantage of these things that are happening now. So I think you have to live it. You have to, like, I think 2020. I think you have to live it because only you can't read it you can't read this in a book. Like, for example, you can read about all these buy on a dip in a book and then bounce back up, but you have to live it to realize, okay, never again, or I know what to do next. Personally, but we're going off topic.
So just kind of being an outsider of the conversation, I personally feel like I'm hearing you guys say the same thing, just slightly different angles. Personally, I think
now we are.
Because I think the outcome of what you both are saying, the outcome doesn't necessarily change. Olu's just saying that if you let me replay this back to make sure that I've understood, because I'm sure other listeners may appreciate it as well. Olu's basically saying that if you educate yourself enough and know everything properly beforehand, then you don't need to learn from your mistakes. You basically can just execute when the opportunity arises. Pabilo is basically saying that until you've gone through the experience yourself, then it's only when you've gone through the experience and learn everything afterwards can you realize what that experience was, and then you can make the action later on. So for me,
you're wrong. It's a bit of both. I think it's a bit of both. The way you said that, because I think it's a bit of both. And
but that's the thing. I don't think it's one or the. I don't think it's one or the other.
I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
So Olu, does that answer the question that you had?
Nope.
No, but
was that a question? Was it a question or a statement?
No. We're waiting for Daniel before. We're waiting for Daniel. Daniel,
what's
you didn't
happening
answer.
today is unfair.
Huh?
No,
Daniel.
I get the tone. I get the sense.
Daniel needed to answer the value of money. That's where we were.
Yeah,
boy.
Yeah,
that was a long time ago. That's like 15 minutes ago. What's the question?
So what does money mean to you, Daniel? What's the value of money mean?
So the value of money is PV, present value, equals future value over 1 plus R.
Okay.
That's
Thank you for your dissertation. Send us a copy of your dissertation formula.
No, the value of money, I don't think it's necessarily changed, and I think it just maybe amplified that money should be a tool that we use to create cash flow. Mm-hmm. One thing that we've all seen, regardless of your employment status or whatever it is right now, it's the importance of cash flow. We're spending a lot more time at home. If you work and you're getting paid 12 times a year, but really and truly, it's the cash flow that will help you to stay above water, to help meet your short to medium and long-term needs at the same time. Because right now, we're all thinking, how can I be making money whilst I'm sleeping? How can I be making money while I'm conversing on this podcast? Because it's great that we have a fixed and, God willing, a stable job. But outside of that, what else can I do to generate more income to invest in other areas? But conversely, at the same time, I might be a walking contradiction, but we all know cash is king, because it's only with cash is what you can only do any investment with the liquid cash that you have.
I'm sure Pabilo and Shua could tell you about some no money down deals that they could do.
let me save my impressions
no money down guy, bro.
Off the podcast. Let me save my impressions off the podcast.
No, One question I had is one question I had for you guys is so a few years ago, a few of us purchased Bitcoin and some cryptocurrency, and I just wanted to so for some of the listeners that probably don't know what we're laughing at, Daniel, can you tell us what books you just held up?
No, it's
Or
just
two books you held up.
a serial entrepreneur who helps you in property. You're just doing a shameless plug. That was all.
Okay, no,
Yeah,
but
my cryptocurrency portfolio is up 64%.
64%. So you kept it. So the reason why I'm asking this question, one of our listener, by the name of, I think it was Hannah, right? Or if I'm correct, Daniel,
I don't remember the name.
wanted us to just basically give an update on what's going on with our cryptocurrency. I remember some certain people in this podcast crushing me, Pabilo, about having cryptocurrency and it dipping. So did anyone sell? Do you still have your cryptocurrency? How is it doing right now? And what is your plan for the future of cryptocurrency?
No, actually,
So
I've calculated
why don't we
wrong.
start
It's
with
more
you?
than 64%.
So what did you do?
I haven't. So yeah, my favorite holding period is forever. So that means I haven't sold. That's the first thing.
It's because yeah, go on.
Go on, say what you can say. What you can say.
Is it because you didn't know what you're doing or you forgot the account?
Forgot the password to sell it.
Forgot the password. This is where forget your password actually helps you.
To be fair, I actually can't log into Coinbase right now, so I couldn't sell if I wanted. So I don't have any. But what's interesting, I actually at one stage was planning to sell it and to cover some fees on a property deal, but I'm glad I haven't. I'm thinking about putting more in. It is speculation. It could be
more money in crypto.
Yeah. Why are you surprised to hear that?
You of all people.
Yeah, come on, man.
This is the guy that just says property.
My Bitcoin, my Litecoin, my Ethereum is busting through the roof, man. So I need to just yeah. So I haven't sold. Thinking of putting in more, and thinking about looking at other coins.
Sure.
But I'm only putting in with this. I'm literally only putting in when I put the money in. I actually assume I've lost it.
Great investment advice. Sure.
So I've only got. I was just checking my. I've only got Ethereum left. Coins that I have
You went
left.
quiet there. Was that because you was speaking of the amount? How comes it went quiet there?
No,
Yeah,
I
you
was
keep
actually
breaking
because
Oh, it was breaking up. I thought you was breaking down these amounts.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, cool. Yeah, I was saying. So the only bit crypto that I have left is Ethereum. I was just trying to calculate as a percentage how it's done. It's basically
Wait.
more than doubled. More than doubled.
That means you sold your Bitcoin.
No, I still have it. I don't. The only thing I have left is Ethereum.
So you sold your Bitcoin then?
So you sold your Bitcoin.
Ah, yeah, but I sold that years ago, man. But
Okay, so you sold when it was down.
Ethereum's performed just as the Bitcoin I already sold. My Ethereum's done really well. It's almost doubled.
What price point did you get into at Bitcoin? Can you remember?
Nah, I don't have it on here now.
If you could, are you on Coinbase?
Yeah.
Go
If you had one coin,
go to portfolio tab and then click on Ethereum, and then it show you Ethereum wallet. Click on that. It will tell you how much your history.
Oh yeah.
Would you tell him how much he would have made if he kept it?
No, it just tells you how much you would. You have to calculate it yourself.
What about you, Daniel? Yourself.
Daniel's a big boy in this thing. We might as well go to Oli first and then Daniel last. Daniel's a big boy in this thing. Oli, go ahead.
I want to receive some Ethereum.
So for me, I kept all my Bitcoin, Ethereum, and also Litecoin. I didn't invest more into it when it dipped. Reason I didn't invest more was just because I didn't understand it. It wasn't, the adoption wasn't the best.
I still don't understand it.
And right now it's doubled, so I'm more than happy. My plan is to not invest more into it personally, just because I don't see the use case in regards to as a economic currency. I see it more as just an asset, like people are treating it like gold and stuff like that, which there's nothing wrong with it. But I never think we're going to get to a place where, at least with Bitcoin, where people are going to be using as a currency, just because of two reasons. For me personally, there's no fixed value to it, so it fluctuates. It's too volatile. So it's like I might have one coin today. That one coin might be valued something today. Tomorrow it could be valued something else.
Yeah,
So
but they're pegged to fiat currencies. But they're pegged to fiat currencies, though. But they're pegged to fiat currencies.
Yeah, but the fact that for me, for the fact of the volatility and the changes of it, I just don't see people using it as just
then try ETFs. Try crypto ETFs. That's you manage your risk a lot better with ETFs. Because
you could just say
I just wanted to double check, Olu, if you're wearing a turtleneck under that hoodie. Or...
No, just oh, I was actually gonna be like, no. I was like, wait, am I wearing a turtleneck? I was like,
the thing is, I'm surprised you haven't looked at it like from a value investing standpoint. So put some money in today. You know it's going to go up because of the interest, because you've got now companies that are backing it. That's a game changer in itself. And then basically you talk about use, but it could serve you well if you basically sell your position and then use that to buy asset.
Yeah, but when you talk about companies backing it, right? You're talking about one person who's really backing it.
Yeah,
right?
one person. Yeah, now, but Jamie Dimon has also come forward and backed it. There'll be more companies. There'll be more companies.
One person's been vocal. There are many other companies who are backing it, but in a very careful manner.
Although I think this is going to be another one of the examples where it goes up to 100,000 plus, and then you turn around and say,
even if it goes to 100,000 plus, right? That's increased by 100%. I've got other plays that I believe will generate.
But what's going to give you
100% return? Yeah.
Huh? Yeah.
100% return.
If I look at the first property I purchased, that's gone up 76%, and I didn't have to have any risk right there. If you look at, I've been investing in banking companies since last year. That's gone up 40%, 50%.
Yeah, but that property is that one's a liquid though. So if you want to pull that money out, you're taking on more debt. It's a different kind of game, man.
Hey, I am comfortable in the rivers.
Don't try to make an argument to not get involved in Bitcoin. I'm telling you, Bitcoin's in and out.
And you know what? I just see so many people investing in it when it was high. AMC, GameStop, all of that stuff, right? And right now, I don't like investing in stuff that have too much hype, because I learned my lesson last time. So if it ever crashes again, I'll silently invest £500 a month, and then hopefully we'll be talking about this differently. What about you, Daniel? Before we wrap up,
drum roll.
Big
boy portfolio.
Daniel, by the way, for the
office that is in there is hot dog.
Daniel invested in Bitcoin in 2009. All right, 2009. Check the prices and do the maths.
No. Do you know what's crazy? Yeah, real quick, just Daniel, before you go, real quick, yeah.
2009.
Real quick, we were in this is another example of like, you don't know what you don't know. We were in a club in LA, right? And then AJ hits me to the side and says, yo, you know anything about Bitcoin? I goes, nah. I didn't even go home and do research. I didn't even, you know what I'm trying to say? So the signs are there, right? But
when was that? What year was that? What year was that?
2000.
It was 2017.
2017. So imagine getting in then. If I'd put 5K in then, this is how Olu talks. If I put 5K in then, imagine where it would be. So my point is you have to live.
You don't put that amount in something you don't believe in.
Exactly.
That's the whole
but
point.
The thing is, what I will say though, if you got someone like him who's in the investment space, or someone like that, right, who's got their eye to a number of investments, that says to you, yo, you know about this, you should be thinking.
Back to crypto. So in terms of crypto, my investments, I didn't sell anything. I kept it as it was. In fact, I bought a few more coins recently in the last couple of months and just expanded my portfolio. I believe that go on, so P?
Coins as in more of the same current crypto.
Yeah, more digital assets, different digital coins. Because when you think about the kind of the landscape of things and how it's evolving, digital currencies are definitely going to be something that's here to stay. When you hear things like Tesla saying about they're going to accept Bitcoin payments and other digital wallets that are coming into circulation, and some countries now saying they're looking for a digital currency, Sweden being one, which is the most cashless country in the world.
I can confirm that.
There is a certain proclivity to be moving towards a cashless society. We started off very slowly with contactless payment. We started off with Apple Watches and other devices that you can make payments on the move without having physical cash. There is going to be a time when we move to the more digital world. Bitcoin is coined, pun intended, as the digital gold. When you look at the different kind of blockchain technologies, you've got Ethereum 2.0 coming along the way, and all these coins run off technology, so they're networks in actual fact. And when you think about these, you can really very much with the fundamental and data that's available, when you look at network addresses, what's been pinged, number of wallets in circulation, etc., the direction of the market. It is a very volatile market. If you're going to invest, be prepared to see highs and lows in quick fashion. If you want a safer bet, of course, ETFs might be a better alternative for you, but it is inevitably going to rise. They're going to be drops as well, and sharp drops, significant drops. But if you believe in the technology, if you believe in the direction that things are going, there is no reason why you shouldn't even put in a few pounds at a time. You don't have to invest all the money you want to invest. Doesn't have to be in one go. And this goes with anything. You can do it in stages. If you don't, not too sure, put a bit of money in, see how it goes. If it goes down, might be you want to buy at the dip, so you believe it's going to rise again. It just could be some a financial event that's impacted the value or the share of that stock. But inevitably, I think it's going to be one that is going to grow. There are thousands of coins out there. Not all of them are good. Some of them are very dodgy, linked to very somewhat nefarious activity. But
Like
do your own research. Some are some are just hype, like on Reddit, whatever it may be. But an investment tip, here's a free one for you, and it doesn't just go for the stock market. The only people who get hurt on a roller coaster are the ones who jump off. There you go.
Say that to the people that invested in GameStop. Tell them that there's certain people that are still in there.
Time out. Olu, 1 second. Daniel, run that one more time, please, because that one I think speaks to investing in general. That speaks to investing in general.
The only people who get hurt on a roller coaster are the ones who jump off.
Daniel, one more time and say it slowly, please. I beg. Say it slowly.
Print this out.
Say it slowly.
The only people who get hurt on a roller coaster are the ones who jump off. And that's how Mary had a little lamb.
Olu, go ahead. That's how you do. That's mic drop.
Like I always say, we are not a financial advising podcast. If you do want financial advice, please speak to an expert, a professional. Do not take any financial advice or tips from us about any of
or people on Instagram.
Or people from Instagram. A lot of those people are not even invested or in the market, and you don't know what their true rationale or reason for the advice that they give. One thing I'll say to you, Daniel, in regards to Elon, just before we close out, did you hear about the issues he's facing in China about the electric batteries? So a lot of people believe that the reason he invested in, because timing wise, invested in cryptocurrency was to hide or disguise the issues they're having with China about the electric batteries that they produce. And because China is such a large market for Tesla. So again, these are some of the reasons why I personally don't want to invest into crypto. But like we said, do your own research, do your own information before you decide to invest. So thank you for listening to episode number 71. On this episode, we went into the rich getting richer during the pandemic. We talked about, do we believe it's fair that some of these online giants have been able to accumulate trillions and trillions during this pandemic? We've also talked about what is the value of money. What does that mean to us as it changed during this pandemic? And lastly, we looked into our crypto investments to see who kept their investments, who sold their investments, and if anyone is planning to continue investing in cryptocurrency. So thank you for listening. I'll pass it over to Daniel.
If you have any feedback for us, feel free to message us on Instagram. You can find us at Take Flight Podcast or email us at takeflightpodcast@gmail.com. Take care. God bless.
Take off, take flight with you. Yeah, for we never fly, but